What's up, guys? Let's have a look at the app financial model, and we're going to go through this at a high level. There's a lot of cool features, but I'm going to skip over most of them and just help you see if this is going to be something that's really going to help you or not, and whether or not you should pick it up. So now every one of my models starts out with an intro, which gives you some general feedback and advice, explains what each of the sheets are and how the formatting syntax works. Then on the formatting sheet, there's only a couple of things you actually need to put in. And that's when do you start inputting your actuals, if you have actuals, and when does the forecasting element of your model start. The formatting and the currency just changes the headers, and the model is denominated in US dollars, or the dollar sign. Now, if you have taxes, then of course, look, very simple. You just type in what your tax rate is. And as an app, if you're distributing across the app stores and taking payments through that system, then there are going to be costs. So very simply, all you need to do is put in what the app store costs are, and that'll make deductions for you in your P&Ls. Now, there are three P&Ls here: your actual, your forecast, and your combined. Why? Well, as you are fundraising or using your operational model, you're going to have new numbers every single month, right? And how much of a pain is it for you to have to build a model and then redo the whole thing every single month? That's just painful, right? So with this model, you can say, right, we don't have any actuals yet, but we've been fundraising for a month. And now we have numbers for January. So we can pop in our numbers for January. And then in the formatting, you would just say that you're starting your actuals in January, but you're starting your forecast then in February. And therefore, the combined sheet would know that we're going to take our numbers from January for the actuals and then February for the forecast. You can see the actual sheet was blank, and so now there's no numbers here. Let's change this back again, and we'll see it's only pulling from the forecasts now. Now the P&L is relatively detailed to help you think about all the key assumptions that you might need to involve. And so, like all the sheets, they're invariably grouped, so you just press the numbers or on the side to ungroup them. You start off at your top line with your users, the Android or Apple users you have. If you're making revenues, either service feature revenue or advertising revenue. If you have discounts and vouchers, cancellations, what your COGS are, your marketing, bad debt, your OPEX, your G&A, your R&D, your S&M. And then we don't do balance sheets and full cash flow statements because they're a total waste of time and no one cares or looks at them. As a startup, your balance sheet does not matter at all. So what we do, though, is we make an operating cash flow, which is sort of taking your net income, making a series of adjustments, including for when you're actually going to be paying out. So if you're only paying out tax on an annual basis, then you're going to pay out in, say, December. If you're paying bonuses in December, then you're going to be paying bonuses in December. So you'll accrue them in your P&L, but the operating cash flow will actually tell you when your costs are being taken out. And if you want to change your month end, right now December equals 12, so we just pick 12, maybe it's 11. That'll change the month where the adjustments are made, all by just changing one drop-down menu, okay? And so the forecast is exactly the same, and we can ungroup it all. And see all these green? That means that they're linked to all the other sheets. There's only a couple assumptions you need to put into here. That's your discounts and vouchers, your cancellations, your bad debt, and if you're doing any fundraising. And boom. For your P&L, that's all the calculation, all the inputs, assumptions you need to put into it. Otherwise, it pulls from the rest of the sheets in the model. The P&L combined was literally almost the same as the P&L forecast. All it does is has some smart little logic, which says, you know, take it from the forecast or take it from the actual, depending on what you've picked here. Now, one cool thing I've built, which I don't think I've ever seen any other model do, is a source and use or runway calculator. You can say, you know, how many months do you want to fundraise? What month do you want to close your fundraise? How many months of runway do you want? And then based on your forecast, the model will tell you actually how much you need to raise. Or you could input how much you want to target to raise, and it'll tell you how many months of runway that you'll have. Now, there are some little sneaky things I've done as well, but let's not get into them. Now, here's an example of a great chart that I make called Marimekko. It tells you for your main categories what are your spends on 2 dimensions, which is cool. Or you can look at the more traditional version and see use of funds. So 52% is COGS and 24% is S&M. And what happens if an investor says, well, 52% of COGS is a lot? What's actually there? You're thinking, uh-oh, I have to do math. Well, no. What I've done is set this up so you can see every single line item for all of your costs. So for COGS, we have our staff here, user care, we have bonuses, payments, we've got office costs assigned to it, server costs, email costs, and so you know exactly what you're spending here. And the same thing for all your other departments. Then we have depreciation, amortization, and tax, which is everyone's favorite topic. Now, you can be as complicated or simple as you want with this. If you don't really care about this stuff, or you don't understand, just leave my assumptions as they are. They're fine. No one's really going to care that much because, you're probably fairly early stage. You're not a growth stage private equity style company. But if you're a CFO and you understand, useful CapEx lives, or, you have net operating losses that you want to factor in, sure, the model can do that. But if you don't want to care about it, just skip the sheet. Then we have just a nice simple overview, which you can copy and paste into your pitch deck. It's got approximately the right number of line items, but you can add or remove ones as you feel like it. It's not connected to anything, it's just an output, so feel free to mess around with it. Here I show you 12 months and then the summary for the 3-year forecast. Then we've got a load of KPIs for you to track. Does your model make sense? How are you spending money? And this is a great output to review and see if your inputs into the model are making sense. We've got a bunch of charts. These are basically pulled from each and every sheet. Again, they're useful at the KPIs to actually just graphically see, are things making sense? Ooh, it looks like a lot of coming is from viral. Is that really true? Or should it really be coming from paid marketing? It's up to you to figure out what the trajectory of your business is going to be. Now, staff are, of course, very important, and they're a huge cost function in your business. So I group things up into G&A, R&D, S&M, COGS. And if you want to add in, say, yourself, the CEO or CFO, you just type in the date you joined. If you fire someone, it'll stop paying them in the model, and your salary. If you pay bonuses, those get added in on top. Now, for payroll and taxes, rather than making it complicated, I just allow you to put one number in for your average taxes and benefits for all staff, and those get incorporated. So if you are going to do a Series A, B, C in future, and these salaries, you promised everyone they're going to be higher at an inflection point, say your Series A, well, you just type in what the increase of salary is, end the month, and the model will automatically step up those salaries for you. So you can see here, 8,000 as opposed to 6,000. One little thing I have is for scaling. So if you need to suddenly hire, say, 5 people a month, the model will say that, okay, fine, you have to hire recruiters because you're not going to have time to do it yourself. The only other real automation I've built into here is for what I call user care or customer care support. And this will automatically determine how many people you need to add on. See, add user care staff, depending on your assumptions that you make in another sheet. Now, no one should be wasting time figuring out how many pens and pencils and paper clips they're going to be buying, right? Total waste of time. So I just make things in 3 buckets: your office, your onboarding, your travel. So office, phones, all these things that people are going to use, right? They may be higher or lower for different types of people. Say the salespeople may have a higher cost per month. Your onboarding costs, look, every time you hire someone, you need to have laptops, chairs, desktops. If you're sneaky and you're doing remote work and you're not giving laptops, then sure, put that at 0, up to you. If you have people traveling, what is the average cost? Now, again, if, at a Series A, B, C, you're going to suddenly step up those costs. Again, just type in what that is, the month it increases, and the model will just forecast that increase. Now, for everything else, like rent, we just do it on a per person basis, say $250 a month or $400 a month per person. And for all the other costs, you can easily put in what you want. Just nice and simple, not complicated, easy to explain to investors. And then you can, look at your charts and see, do those things actually make sense? So this is a really cool sheet, which is really hard to do to try and make it as simple as possible, actually, but give you a lot of flexibility. As you can see, the formulas are pretty crazy. Now, you're going to have, these are predominantly COGS costs, but you're going to have other expenses, right? So payment costs, depending on what system you're going to use. You're going to have server costs, and you're going to have email costs. Those will just filter into your P&L. Now, for that little automation I mentioned in staff for your user support, which goes under your COGS here, I said that was calculated. That's here. So you can say for your 3 categories of customers, as you define them, say your basic, premium, pro, what percentage of users will require support, how many minutes will you spend on each one, and how many hours focused a day would each person spend. And then the model just figures out how many people you need and rounds it up and feeds into P&L and feeds it into your staff sheet. Now, let's talk about making some money. You're going to have all these users. Hopefully, you have a plan on how you're going to make money, right? Maybe you don't know. So you can have a play around with this and see what the outcomes might be. So I give you 2 options, right? What I call service revenue, which is people paying for stuff. And you have ad revenue. Okay, so service revenue and ad revenue. And for each one, you can organize that for 3 tiers of customers. So people who maybe doesn't use you very much, people who use you a lot. So let's just dig into, say, the service revenue one. Just open it all up so you can see what's going on here. So the link assumptions feed in from the sheets. We see the summary of all your numbers, and then the summary for your ads here. So services, ads. So for your service revenue, you can pick what I call modules. So like pay to remove a watermark, to get extra credits for something, or whatever features you're going to launch. And how much are you going to charge for those features? $5 per month? I don't know, up to you. Maybe call it 2. So when are you going to actually release these products? You just type in 1 on the month you're going to release them. So, you could say you're going to release it in the future if you want. Suddenly you can see the numbers are changing, right? And then the model picks up when your features can be live and then says, well, what percentage of customers by plan are actually going to purchase them? And then you can see basically what your revenue per user is going to be. Do the same thing for your premium and your pro if you have those tiers of user. Now, of course, ad revenue, it's one of the oldest ways of making money. Not necessarily the best, but hey. So I think about this in terms of your inventory, which can be branded, unsold, or direct response. So for branded, you're going to have a CPM for it. This may increase over time, and you may have a revenue per client, which yields effectively their number of impressions per client. And then your direct response, you can pick if you're going to do general or specific ads. So your general will have a certain CPM, and your specific ads can have, different costs depending on the type of ad banner you do. And that enables you to just pick everything you want. So there's a lot of detail there if you want to get into it. And then this basically calculates how much revenue you can make out of your advertising. Now, this is just a summary from some of the sheets have quite a lot of calculations, which you'll see in a second. This just enables you to see the outputs from those really long sheets without having to go through those really long sheets. So you can see your users and whether or not they're Apple or Android, the churns, and what's really happening on a month-by-month basis across everything from new users to viral users and churn, upgrades and downgrades. Okay. Now, this is a really important sheet. Effectively, all your marketing activities are going to filter through this one, and you're going to categorize your users into a number of categories. So Android, Apple, of course, are important. So these are the 2 that we're going to do. So we're going to assume that from traditional marketing, 50% of people will download Apple, 50% will download Android. And you can change those numbers if you want over time. Your composition may change. So you can see of those 2,419 downloads, which came from the marketing sheet, 1,210 for each of Apple and Android. Now, you can have tiers of users, maybe. They could be basic, premium, and pro. So I just split them all evenly, 1/3 each. And the same thing for Android. And so you can see what monthly downloads are effectively going through, all of those. Now, when you get them, you're really going to want to figure out how long it takes them to get active. So, maybe they'll download it, but they don't really use it, or they forget about it, or there's a trigger. So, you could say 100% of people will use it in the first month, or you could say, do you know what? Maybe it might take them time. And so, it'll take 2 months before people actually really become active on our platform. You can do that for both your Android and your Apple. And so depending on the logic you want to apply, you can do slightly more complicated things, or you just can make it simple and leave it like I did and just assume everyone becomes active in the first month. Now, churn. You're not going to believe this, but churn in the first 3 months, according to various research studies that I read, is about 80%. So you're going to lose about 65% of people in the first month, 10% in the second, and around 5% in the third. This changes a little bit depending on your category, but not a lot. If you want to live in La La Land, feel free to make those numbers a lot smaller. And then what is the useful life for? The retention in number of years that you're going to keep people. Could be 5, it could be 2, it could be 1. You'll see what the effective monthly churn rate is, which is what you want to stabilize to and continually have churning post, the initial adoption of users. Now, if you want users to go up or down between, your various packages, so they, can upgrade from the basic version to a premium version, you just type in the percentage. If people, downgrade 10%, then you just type in the percentage. If you don't want to deal with it, just leave it 0. Now, this is a monster sheet, which took me about a month or so to build. And it's the only one in the world, basically, which will enable you to forecast the virality of users. And there is math involved if you want to really understand it. You will need to do some reading. Rather than trying to explain this in a couple of hours to you, what I recommend doing is heading back to my blog and reading this blog on how to model viral growth at your startup, okay? And I go through this in relative detail, and so how you can really think about it, okay? Once you've read that, and you'll need to, especially if you want to tell investors that you're going to be, going the viral route, you'll need to be able to talk about it. So come back into the model and really start having a play. Now, what's really cool about this is I've treated virality as an engineering phenomenon, meaning something you have to build with product, okay? And so the main components of that, if we ungroup these, will be the number of invitations people make, which you can have a feature improvement to then increase those number of invites. The conversion rate, and you might do a feature improvement which will increase your conversion rate off your base rate. The same thing for viral cycle time and your churn calculations, and even your market size. And so you can actually take a relatively vigorous approach to how you're actually going to engineer virality. Now, you can go through the rest of the model. There's quite a lot of calculations, etc., that are involved in here, but I've done them for you. It's, of course, great to understand how they work, but I've done the math, all right? So, put in some base rates, play around with how you're going to make feature improvements, and see what the impact is going to be on the number of users you get. Now, it's important to understand that in this purpose of this model, I make a difference between your traditional marketing and viral marketing. Since viral marketing is not something you can guarantee, it's something you can work on, you can build, but, in normal marketing land with, organic SEO, paid marketing, affiliates, etc., if you spend money, you're probably going to get users, right? The more money you spend, the more users that happen. That's not guaranteed with virality, especially when you're, an early stage app startup. So I separate it a little bit so that you can see the effect on your business from both of those main channels. Here is a big graph I made for you to understand how difficult it actually is to get virality and what are the key factors that will impact on your virality. So once you started playing with the numbers, you can actually see what your effective viral growth rate or churn rate will be and how that leads to virality. And frankly, it's actually pretty tough. But these graphs will help you understand once you actually know what all these funky numbers mean. Now, next, in the conversion assumptions, we're filtering out the marketing to the users into categories. Now, this is effectively like your funnel. And once it funnels out, we have these two workhorses who are going to do all the calculations. And by all the calculations, I mean a lot of calculations. So, I mean, there are, 1,200 calculations for the Apple and the Android calculations each. And so this will take all your numbers, as you see, these green numbers again, and start modeling things on a monthly cohort basis. Now, I spent a lot of time making this, so it's useful to just understand what's going on. But again, I did all the hard work for you. And these will just spew out what your actual forecasts are going to be for all users that you'll see here. And these were in your user summary, as I mentioned. Now, the Android is exactly the same structure, and that'll filter out into user summary, and these will fill into your other places like your KPIs and your charts and your P&Ls as output. Now, we're at the last section, which is marketing. So I'm just going to start at the end. I have covered basically the gamut of options for marketing here. You can do blogging, so you can get featured in TechCrunch or Vanity Fair or, Neil Patel's blog or something. How often are you going to be featured? Just 1, 2, 3 times a month. How much traffic do you get? And then from that, we make assumptions on how your traffic is going to convert into downloads or trial users. You can do social media, see some effectively virality from sharing of people from that. And then email is similar. It can be as complicated or simple as you want. Just leave my assumptions there if you like, or you can get more funky. And then we have organic, which is simple. Let's say how many people are we going to get in? It's going to grow every single month. Thank you very much. Now, why should you bother dealing with the organic email and blogging, social kind of stuff? It's because, if you can get 10, 20, 30% of your traffic for free, that will decrease your effective CAC, which is nice, right? That's 30% free marketing. So it's worthwhile putting in some effort into creating compelling logic as to why your CAC will be lower through these other initiatives. Now, the next we have is paid marketing. You're going to spend money on marketing. You're going to have a CPC, and that's going to lead to traffic. So, do some keyword analysis, figure out what you think your CPCs are going to be on what you can afford, and what your budget's going to be. You can also do it generally, SEM display, Facebook affiliates, and then you can assign them to the platform. So like the general. If you spend specific budget on the Play Store or the App Store, that marketing effort will be focused directly onto that store. So if you spend $100,000 in the App Store and nothing on the Android, then when it comes to this conversion assumption funneling thing, everything is just going to go to that store where you spent the money. So if you're doing generalized marketing, paid marketing, put it in for generalized. Or if you're doing specific marketing, you can put it in for the specific platform you want to target, right? So you'll see, typically your budget's going to increase over time. Maybe your CPC will too, but that's up for you to decide. Now, after you've done your paid marketing, all the traffic from all these places come to here. Okay, and then you make assumptions from that traffic, what percentage of traffic will be downloads. So is it 4%, 1%, 0.5%? And there you go, right? You figured out what your downloads are. Of course, like always, the model can be a little bit bigger with a lot more details and even some market saturation calculations if you need them, and optimizations for all your channels. But again, up to you if you really want to get into those details. The model is there for you to use it how you like it. It's complicated or it's simple. So that's it at a high level. I know I've covered a whole ton. It's important to realize that I don't make basic little models, which you do just to kind of get it done because maybe an investor wants it, right? I build models for founders who actually want to be successful. You do not start up to fundraise. You start up to cash out. So you need to spend time actually understanding your business model, all the key drivers, your costs, what the growth drivers are going to be, those levers, right? To what extent do you need to depend on virality to make your model work or not? I mean, if virality doesn't happen to you, does your paid and organic channels actually work or not? And so the typical feedback that I get from founders is, do you know what? Phew, that was quite a lot. But do you know what? It forced me to ask questions that I wouldn't have asked myself either. And so I learned a whole lot. So if you are an app business, you're distributing on the Android and Apple Store, then you know what? This is basically the only model on the internet for you to use. It's going to save you a hell of a lot of time. And trust me, I've done fundraisers years ago when I wasn't even this good at modeling now, and I wasted so much time trying to figure out like a nice fancy marketplace model, and I should have just been executing. And so look, guys, I made these models to help you. They're super affordable. If not, best of luck. There's a ton of free material on my site. I really wish you the best with your startup, guys. Bye.